Welcome to Boxcars, War Machine and Horde's supplementary podcast for War Room PL YouTube channel.
Welcome to Boxcars episode 21.
Wow.
I am, we are still here. I'm Marcin and I'm playing Signal and Minions lately.
And I'm Rafał and I'm playing still Crits.
And we've got a guest. Special guest, Mark. You can introduce yourself.
Hello Internet, I'm Mark Whittenstall and I play Retribution of Scyrah.
Yeah, perfect. So you can contact us by visiting our webpage www.warroom.pl, and there are contact details. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever. If you cannot find us, you're doing the internet wrong.
You've stolen this sentence from somebody else.
Yeah.
That is much more famous than we are.
We didn't stole it, we just borrowed it.
Okay.
Yeah. Alright, so anyway, the next tournament we are going to, I believe is ClockCon on 10th to 12th November. And we'll set up stream there, and also we'll be recording the games as well. So I don't know how many, but I think 4 games.
I think that we can stream. Is it possible to stream 2 at the same time or not?
If we set up a new Twitch account, then we can.
Okay.
But
maybe I will think about that.
Yeah, we could think about it. But you can expect one stream will have a commentator, 1 or 2, so it will be quite interesting. So reserve your time for that. Also, I started Thursday night's games streaming. I'm just starting, so we had some. When I switched my software, the voice was crap, and nobody told me. So
because nobody.
No, there were a couple of people watching actually, but
your wife and your children.
Yeah, I told them you have to watch me on internet, so I have viewers, so I'm not talking to myself all the time. And also I called my mom, but she didn't have any time for me. So no, but I'm trying to make this weekly event. Right now it's irregular, maybe bi-weekly. So every 2 weeks I will do this Thursday night streaming. You can expect regular games, maybe Company of Iron when we have Company of Iron, and maybe some league games. We'll see some fun stuff. What we'll do there. So
maybe I have an idea then. Maybe we will supplement your channel with because you are streaming from your home.
Yes.
And we can stream from our club if you are not streaming then on Thursday, because we also meet on Thursday, as you know.
That would be very interesting. So we could actually
do it all the time, but
do it every week. Yeah. But switch the place. Yeah. That's good. Because I heard that regularity is a key to success, so we should start getting regular or something. I know that sounds terrible.
Yeah.
Alright, so I started playing Minions. I'm like 5 or 6 games in, and
because they are overpowered now.
Yeah, they are very overpowered. Like I got my general win rate this year is about maybe 70%, and with Minions it's like 50% maximum. So I lose every second game, but I'm having fun. So we'll see where it leads me. I always say that I only make one mistake when I'm playing Minions, and actually I don't bring Signal. No, I don't take Signal. So that's my only mistake during the game. No, but learning Hordes after playing from the beginning of the game only War Machine and only Signal, it's pretty hard. So that's them. Yeah. So before we start, talking with David and asking him questions, I want to have
Mark. You mean Mark?
Oh, sorry, Mark.
Oh, can I just interject? Because there's going to be a lot of confusion for people who know me on the internet, people who know me in real life. The name I use on Facebook is not my real name. I'm a teacher. I don't want kids finding me. David is my middle name, just to clear that up.
So I wasn't that wrong. And we have actually a small anecdote on the show notes. I will not tell how many mistakes I made, but I made a lot in the show notes because I made them while waiting at veterinarian with my cats, with my laptop on my knees. So I'm sorry if something else comes up. So anyway, one small advertisement of Vassal. If you
play on Vassal.
Play on Vassal. If you have a small community, you don't have enough games, you want to get better, you don't know, you don't have Kriegs and you want to play Kriegs, or you don't have Minions and you want to play versus Minions, come to Vassal. It's free. You can download it, install it. It's very easy. The controls are easy to learn, and it's just, it's not the same as playing with miniatures, but if you don't have a choice. Yeah, exactly. And you want to do it from your home at very late night, like I do, and actually all shops are closed then just come to Vassal and play with us. I don't know if it's my doing or it's just... Of
course it is you.
Okay, I know it is my doing, but lately, every time I go on Vassal, I find somebody to play. So I'm happy with that. I will now think it was my doing.
So if I might add to that, we set up a group in the UK recently for people interested in joining Vassal, but I'm sure our guys would be willing to help people who want to get introduced to it. So if anybody wants to get into Vassal, feel free to drop me a message on Facebook and I'll get you in there.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so Vassal is not so hard to learn if you have somebody that will tell you the controls, because...
Yeah, it's easy if you are explained.
Yeah.
The thing with Vassal is that it's pretty boring, but on the other hand, you learn, I think, more than from normal game. Maybe not about of course not about the clock, but about the tactics. That's one thing. And the other thing, you can watch TV shows, paint miniatures, play computer games during your Vassal play. So this is also pretty important.
You can learn multitasking as well, but...
no problem on Vassal.
I agree, you get so much information on Vassal. Positioning is much easier because of that. But also, you get... because of that information you have that and know that during regular games. It's just like with anything else. If you do it many times, then you will remember this threads that much and this threads that much. So it's pretty good for that as well. So good. So now to the regular cast. We have here Mark, David. So let's stick to Mark.
It's Mark David.
It's Mark David. Yes. I wasn't. You recently won Scottish Masters.
Yes, indeed, I did.
He did.
So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
And well, it's one of few wins of Retribution this year. I think of bigger events. I haven't seen Retribution on the top many times.
According to Mr. Williams of the Ret page, it is the first Retribution Masters win this year. I don't know about that. I'm sure there's been another one, but they are few and far between. Yeah. We are all terrible.
So, no, I don't think so. Maybe.
No. They needed a hero that you are now. The hero that they deserve.
You are JVM of Retribution now.
In making. Let's not be overreacting. In making, okay?
Let's not go that far, please.
Now you feel pressure, because now you have to go to next con, and win another Masters.
I actually have a Masters in Hungary this weekend, so no pressure.
No pressure, Mark. No pressure at all. But doesn't matter how it will go. But of course, I know, and Rafa knows, everybody should know that every success costs a lot of work. Every success also needs some luck on different levels. So there are many very good players with different factions, and many of them will come to the event and they want to win, of course. So it's not like any win is presented to you. You have to earn it. You have to really work for it. So we've been there. We know how much work it costs. So that should be said. It's not like just you come and have a couple of lucky rolls and you won the Masters. It's not how it works.
No.
It was more than a couple. We'll talk about that.
But maybe you introduce a little bit. You tell us a little bit about yourself, Mark.
Yeah.
How long do you play War Machine?
So I've been playing War Machine for just over 5 years now. Mm-hmm. It's the first miniatures game I've really played. There was a little bit of 40k when I was much younger, but the only game I've played for any length of time is War Machine.
Okay, great. So the only previous background is 40k then, and it was really not counting towards your
I was only 10. I was just a little
okay.
I didn't even know what a tournament was. Oh, those young days.
Yeah.
Different time.
Yeah. So at that time of playing, I played every faction bar for Kado, Trolls, Mercs, and Minions in that time, I believe.
Okay.
I've been on Retribution since February of this year, and I'm intending to continue that for quite a while and set a record for how long I can stick with a faction.
Perfect.
And comparing, because as it seems, as you said, you played different factions. What do you like about Red, comparing to your other experiences?
So the play style I've found has been very different. The majority of my experience comes from Signar and Circle factions with access to very good control casters. Ret sort of has this in the form of Ran. Everyone has access to battle mages, or had, before themes started to really kick off. I would say that's informed the way I play the game very heavily for scenario. But Ret, very good attrition faction. So I've been altering the way I play the game as I learn them to more focus on attrition with the goal of a scenario win in the end. I've found Steamroller 17 very helpful for that. I'm absolutely loving the packet at the moment.
Yeah. We do also, I think.
Saturation, so-called saturation in other podcasts.
But attrition is, scenario and attrition is the key right now, I think, because with the new terrain setup, it's much easier to hide the caster from some crazy or less crazy assassination. So, I think we agree that attrition is the way. And Red, even it's not maybe so obvious, but for me, if I play against Red, it seems that they are like, maybe tank is not the correct way. They are sort of like American army right now. Mm-hmm. So they come, they have the biggest guns. Everywhere. No, but they come in, they have the biggest guns, the best technical support, let's say. They have answer for most of the things, and they just overwhelm you with there was a British, I saw it in some British documentary. You win with the strength of will and overwhelming firepower.
Quite so.
Yeah, so I think this is the way of the Red right now. Mm-hmm. And what are your favorite casters in Red currently, let's say?
Oh, so in Red, Assyria is currently, I'm really enjoying playing her in Shadows at the moment. been getting a lot of games with that recently. My all-time favourite caster, as many people will know, is Helena, who I love playing in Forges of War. I haven't been playing her recently because of Grimkin taking off and her not having a particularly good matchup there, but I still love playing her. Besides that, Ron is the most fun any caster can be. So many options in a turn, so many things you can do.
It's not fun if you're on the other side.
TK is the thing.
Exactly. TK is such a good spell, so many applications, such a good, well-designed caster.
Yeah. When we were talking before we started the recording, we were talking about our future things that we wanted to play, and I started to talk, I like Danny One, but she will get nerfed, and I don't want to, go with the flow, but maybe go a little bit on the opposite direction. Mm-hmm. And I said, come on, Scavi is the caster to go if you learn him. And Marcin just said to me, Scavi TK, of course. So, Sturm and Drang, I must test him also.
Hey, don't laugh at Sturm and Drang. Sturm and Drang are really good.
Okay, I played 3 games with Sturm and Drang, and I won all 3 of them a couple of months ago. So.
Sturm and Drang, undefeated, best caster in the game. Heard it here first.
I don't know how much luck was involved, but I don't remember those games. I just checked on my War Machine record. I record all my games, and I was looking at my minion statistics, and Sturm and Drang were pretty good. So.
Okay. And according to you, what are the top 5 of Red right now? Red casters, of course.
Tough question. When I saw this in the show notes, I really wasn't sure how to answer it. One of the things I've realized recently is that the amount of time I've spent playing all of the Ret casters is quite limited. I've only put major time, like more than 70 games, into a few casters, so lots of people will disagree with this list, I'm sure. So at the moment, I would say definitely Assyria, definitely Helena. Beyond that, Ron definitely belongs in the top 5, still a very good caster, lots of game into various things. I know a lot of people like Viros too. I have yet to be convinced by him, but I plan to give him some more table time, just to be sure whether I'm wrong or not. But I'd hesitate to put him in the top 5 until I have. So my other 2 picks would be Alara 2, just because of how good a matchup she is into Grimkin in my practice games so far, and Thyron as well. Thyron is very underrated in some areas, I find.
I think, is it because of the new Downguard theme that he can get some work done with some free models? Is it because of that, or the I mean the one that is Defenders of Ios? Where is he?
Defenders of Ios is his theme, I would say.
Okay.
He plays very well with 2 Arcantric Force generators. Please don't mention the Dawnguard theme around me. I am hating it so much.
I love the new name of this theme that was put on some podcast, Refugees of Ios.
Yes, it has picked up quite a few new additions, and I suppose that leads us into our next question on the show notes, actually, about the community in general and how sad we are.
I mean, it's general.
It's the way of elves. They are dying race.
Are we
cannot kill it?
Trolls then?
I mean, that's how the Red community is perceived. I'm not actively taking part in this community because I cannot be everywhere. But this is how the community is perceived. Is it true? Maybe you are not really down or how do you see it? How do you see the red community right now?
So the ret community has always had a lot of people in it who have very different opinions on things. It's hard to find two ret players that agree on what the ideal pairing is. And that creates a lot of discussions. A lot of people see different things in their metas. And that can lead to some people seeing this and thinking, oh, everybody must be really sad about the faction. They can't even agree on a good pairing. So it feels sometimes, looking from the outside, that ret is kind of in this negative place where we're not really sure what to play, and every pair we have has some issues. There are definitely some big issues for ret in list building at the moment, but the majority of them I feel are solvable, and I don't feel the community is any less positive than anywhere else. There's just a lot of disagreement, which is good because it fosters innovation. People have to defend their ideas and think, rather than just being like me and saying, oh, this is bad, don't play this. Don't be like me, ret community. Just don't.
Yeah, give a chance to Retribution of Scyrah.
Exactly.
Yeah, actually, one note on the team that shall not be named in Mark's presence. I played yesterday against it, and my poor minions were slaughtered, so I don't think it's so bad.
I am going to hear so much about that from Mr. Williams after this, aren't I? Thank you so much. I'm sure that will be a lovely discussion. The things I do.
Yeah.
So, leaving aside that theme for the moment, shall we move into our list dojo section?
Yeah. I mean, one question that I forgot to put in, I was pretty sure I put it in. Just tell us, how much do you play? How many games a week, a year, a month maybe? Because I know you travel a lot and have a lot of tournaments.
I honestly stopped counting a while back because it was getting to the point where I physically didn't have time to record all of them in something like Steam Genius. It's probably about 10 games a week. It can be more sometimes, it can be less. It depends on how much work I have. Most of it comes from tournaments. As you say, I travel a lot. I try to do an event a week, if not two, where possible. And if ever there's an international event on that I want to go to, I'll always try and make it to that.
Okay.
That sounds
That's
crazy.
quite a lot.
Can I say that I thought I play a lot. I play like 4 to 5 games a week, but
that's cute.
Yeah, but that's cute. Yeah. No, I can say it's.
Not a pro matching. What are you doing here? 4
games a week in Poland. Anywhere else, I'd rather have 4 games a week, right?
I mean, most of them are on Vassal, so.
So they are not that so much in Poland anymore.
Let's say they are
in internet.
Poland, somewhere in. Yeah.
I'm trying to be nice about Poland. Let me be nice.
I'm playing. I try to get 2-3 games a week in Poland, and sometimes 1 game with Marcin or 2 if we have time.
Yeah.
On Vassal, of course, because we are living 250 kilometers from each other.
Yeah. But I wanted to lead on, so to say, with that question is that to have a success, you have to play a lot of games and probably do many more things as well. But playing games in repetition and testing lists, what works, what doesn't, and how each matchup works. We had many examples like. We had Patas, I guess, who also plays a lot, and Jarle, who used to play huge amounts of games every week as well. Sometimes two games a night. So the success that you and the other guys had, it came from hard work, playing a lot of games, and I mean hard work just in. Let's say in our hobby where we're having fun with playing, but it's still you have to put in a lot of games to have success on the highest levels.
sometimes it can be about the reward you get from playing all those games and seeing the success rather than enjoying each individual game. Because sometimes you'll just be smashed. It happens. Sometimes we lose hard. We don't enjoy it as much. But it's about picking yourself back up and getting back into it.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So, as you said, we're moving on to List Dojo. So how do you come up with the right pair?
I start with a Scyrah and I work out what I'm scared of. In all seriousness, the way I try to dojo lists, there's normally two ways of doing it I've found people talk about. Either you build to ask a question or you build to answer a question. I normally build to answer different factions based on what that faction is playing. So besides playing a lot of games, I try to do a lot of research and reading on what's currently popular in the meta and think, how would I answer this? Maybe I'll play the first 3 turns of the game out in my head, because those are the most important turns normally, and it's hard to imagine beyond that, really. There's not much point. So when I'm building a pair, I'll think about how my lists are going to play into all of those matchups. I won't necessarily prepare for things that are less popular, which leaves me vulnerable sometimes, but I only have so much time to put into War Machine. I know it might seem like I have infinite time, but I don't. I really don't. So there will be some things I go into a tournament and I haven't had a practice game against it and I'm not prepared for it. And when we come to game recaps, I believe we'll talk about a game like that for round 3. So I'll be looking to answer things primarily, but I'll also be looking to... More and more, I try to build somewhat for the scenario pack, maybe not in terms of including units in everything, but I'll definitely make sure to include solos that I can easily put on a flag in a scenario like Recon 2 or Spread the Net. I've found circular zones are quite easy to contest, harder for units to score, but I'll definitely put solos aplenty in every list I can, just to make sure I can grab a flag on a key turn.
Yeah, or contest. Run a guy that is cheap and can contest the other for a second at least. Yeah.
Exactly. We can't all have gremlin swarms, but we make do with what we can.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So you mentioned that you read a lot before. So what's your tournament-specific preparation? It's also part of meta-analysis or list analysis before?
Yeah, the tournament, because every tournament has a different meta. It depends. For example, in Poland, Boros is popular. In UK, it can be Retribution of Scyrah, for example. In France, something different. Yeah. So did you prepare also for the Scottish?
So it's quite hard for me to prepare for events outside of England. I pretty much know every English player and where they play, roughly what they're playing. And I know who I really, really need to watch out for, who could bring something and surprise me. So I can prepare for those okay. For something like Scotland, I have visited tournaments up there a few times in the past. I'm very familiar with a lot of people up there, but there's still people I haven't met. The faction breakdown for the event, which we'll talk about later, didn't surprise me that much, but there were a few things in there I wasn't expecting and that I just had to cover in my general preparation for the event.
Okay.
So you mentioned that you think a lot about the scenario packet. So in this 2017 packet, you prefer going first or second, or is it depending on specific scenarios?
There is never a scenario or a terrain setup or a matchup where going first is not what I would choose. I am willing to publicly commit to that because in hundreds of Mark III games, I have never once chosen to go first. And when somebody has chosen to give me first turn, I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe I have won all of those games. The first turn is so crucial in this game because one of the players from the English WTC team, who has since left the game for the time being, told me something very important at the beginning of Mark III, and I've taken it to heart since. He told me that he sees the game shifting so that attrition begins on the bottom of turn 1, and going first gives you a whole turn to set up and prepare for that, and make such a big counter punch on turn 2, and take so much ground as well, especially important in this scenario packet. But it was also important in Steamroller 17 that you can get such an advantage. A lot of matchups can change based on, I know sometimes we say something like, I don't know, Assyria into Dark Host. You might call it, and this wouldn't be my opinion, a 50-50 matchup, but maybe it's 60-40 for whoever goes first, because the first turn allows you to get so far up the board, allows you to dominate the terrain features, allows you to get into zones early. So matchups can swing so hard on getting first turn that I would always choose it. One of the reasons I play Assyria in Shadows is because I see the +1 to go first as a very important theme benefit.
Okay, I agree with that because I played against Assyria Shadows with Dark Host, and it's it's the decision either you have, if you are going second, you have to feed defensively without taking anything out of the table except moving a little bit out of your, just forward, and you cannot do nothing against Assyria, against Shadows. And if you go first, then you don't have to feed, and you can feed offensively, taking more board space with Coven and Dark Host. So yeah, fully agree.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So I usually also take first. It's very rarely I want to go second. Especially if I play Nemo, played Nemo. He wants to go up the board and, as you said, set up for attrition turn 2. Yeah. All right. So your priorities during the game. So I assume you already mentioned that's attrition with scenario in mind. But yes. Sometimes if assassination, you see the opening, will you take it or rather play safe?
It's very context dependent. I almost never, as a rule, go for assassination. But if I'm in a position where I'm losing on attrition or scenario, or I think I can take the attempt, and if I fail, then my opponent will still be in a really bad position, then I'll take it. But I want to stress, though, that latter situation specifically is very rare, because War Machine is a game where someone can come back really hard and get back into a game. And if you're winning, you shouldn't be allowing that to happen. And sometimes getting overconfident and going for that assassination to quickly end the game will end up losing you the game. So in answer to your question, no, I typically don't assassinate, and it's very rare that I would go for it. The exception is with Ron, because Ron can just engineer 92% plus assassinations, and that's normally the point where I would say, yes, I'll go for it. I think there's been 2 assassinations I've went for that were less than 90% in Mark III. One of them was because I was so bored, because I was playing Alara 2 for the first time and hated my life. And the other one was against Mr. Dunford at UK Nationals, where I was very much losing the game and would not have won it if I hadn't went for a low odds assassination. I won't say how low because it's quite embarrassing, but it was pretty low.
If you play against Pat and you're losing, any chance is better than going on and losing.
That's one thing. And the other thing, fortune favors the bold. Okay?
Yeah, true.
Yes, and that's something I want to expand on. If you're losing a game, and you see an assassination opportunity, always take it, because a 0% chance of winning the game on attrition does not look as good as maybe a 1% chance of winning the game on assassination. Always go for it if you have no other option. Don't be afraid to go for it.
Yeah, perfect. So, the next question I have is how you avoid mistakes during the games, or how you try to keep yourself from making mistakes, because you know that one mistake can make you lose a game.
Exactly. So I don't play to avoid mistakes, because honestly, by round 4, I would just be so tired, especially because, as you say, I travel to events, so I'm normally on very little sleep. So sometimes I will make mistakes. What's important is that the other person makes mistakes first, and I exploit them. Then I can make mistakes. Maybe they get back into the game a little bit, but it's important that I make sure my early turns are as perfect as possible. And then I let myself relax maybe a little bit. Not completely, obviously. I don't just go, oh, I'm winning now. You can just have this game. I'll turn my caster around and drop all her focus. But maybe I won't think through my plays as much. I'll try and make sure I still have a clock advantage. I'll try and make sure I still have an attrition advantage. And I'll try to just keep winning. I'll also try not to go for any complicated plays. If something requires a lot of moving parts, a lot of things to do right in order to get it to work, then I'll normally reject it in favour of the simpler plan, just because I won't screw it up. And that's very important, the idea of not screwing up, letting your opponent screw up first, and then capitalising on their mistake. So avoiding mistakes also comes from having lots of practice, which is why I'll tend not to make mistakes in the early turns of a game. It just comes from repeating, playing your lists, muscle memory that you build, of how pieces work, what you can do with them, and that'll be transferable across casters most of the time. So if I've played Assyria for 100 games in Shadows, and I play someone else in Shadows, I'll normally pick it up quite quickly. But it's just a matter of getting that practice in, knowing exactly what your models do, and doing a lot of reading around the game. I have an advantage in that I'm autistic and can do this, but I've probably got 80-90% of the rules for each model in the game memorized. Not maybe to instantly remember, but it's in my head. I don't need to be checking cards during a game. I can trust myself on that, and I can build plans around it without being surprised by, oh, this has dodge? Well, I guess I just lose now. I don't make those kind of mistakes anymore, just because I've built up that memory in my head, that library of what different models do.
That's awesome. I mean, I also have a pro tip, don't get greedy.
Oh, very much. Definitely do not get greedy. If you are winning a game, just keep winning it incrementally in small bits. Yeah. Don't try to win it all in one go. Don't go for silly assassinations. Don't make big attrition plays that if they go wrong, they might leave you open. Just keep winning, little at a time, but keep winning until you've won.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's so English, I would say.
I mean, I just in that game versus Adam yesterday, I got greedy with Midas, and he went in to kill a single dude, and then next turn he died. So,
looking back at that game and your post-game analysis, did he really need to kill that single dude?
Actually, when I did that, I mean, maybe he didn't. I could have just skipped that, but he might have done it and then use sprint from Animus from Warbeast and go back to his previous place, and then I would be safe. But you know, six games in Minions, so I don't even remember that I can use Animuses from my beasts.
Exactly.
But in reality, I could have just skipped that guy and keep my caster back. He didn't have to go in. I was in pretty good position back there. So that's also important. I learned it a lot with Kane 3 and Nemo. They are both
Nemo 3.
Nemo 3. They are both squishy and they are both they want to do work. They have such a nice things in their spell list, their abilities, etc. But they tend to die afterwards. So I learned that hard way a lot of times. So. All right. So you mentioned also the after game analysis. So do you do it much while playing so many games?
It can be hard, especially when I'm trying to play multiple games in a night. But due to having a very good memory for games, I do tend to review them in my head afterwards. It can be difficult to remember specifics, but I will just take away maybe 2 or 3 key things. So this is where I'm quite lucky to be a teacher. I know a lot about how to learn, so I tend to apply that to War Machine. I don't try and make a big list of everything I could have done differently and just cram it. I don't try and give myself too much feedback. It's just, I could have done this better, and this better, and I'll do that next time. And I also try to think about the things I did well. I may not talk about it much. Anyone who's played me in real life would know I'm really negative about my games, but that's just how I am as a person. In my head, I will recognize where something has went well because it's important to keep doing those things. I'm also very lucky to have someone who's very skilled with data as a friend, James Sykes of the England team, who's currently compiling all my games for me and helping me spot any trends in those, which is really helpful.
Very nice.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right, so
Mark has a team of professionals running him as the leader of the War Machine. War Machine team. Mark, okay. That's nice.
Held.
Yeah, like every pro player, you need a coach.
Team behind.
Yeah, you need a coach. You need the person who makes your diet and your travel arrangements and what else?
You joke, but it's actually somebody in England who makes me drink water during tournaments. I just want to point that out. I do have a War Machine dietitian.
I knew that.
Yeah, that's the secret.
But it's very, very important.
Exactly.
Right. I thought I was joking, but
not really. I during my last tournament, I was really low on power, and I had an apple in my pocket, and I ate it, and I won. So never joke about food.
I mean, I also carry a ton of apples with me. Apples are clearly the secret to being good at War Machine. All this time we thought it was playing Ghost Fleet, but no, it's apples.
And then I recognized my mistake because I always carry nuts with me, so that's why I'm not winning that much.
They disturb you because you have to, crush them with the teeth. And apples are tasty.
They are pre-crushed, so pre-crushed, pre-packed.
Okay.
Come on, I'm lazy.
Okay, do you have any tips for new players that intend to play Retribution? What to expect and what are the first steps?
So I have some tips for new players in general and for Retribution specifically. New players in general, do not be afraid to ask the established players in your meta all the questions. We will not find you annoying. We will not find them stupid. We've probably heard them before, and we're always happy to help. I don't know anyone in this community who wouldn't be happy to help a new player. One of the English Scorn players who's recently really taken off has done so with just a few months of play under his belt by asking all the best Scorn players in the world, how do I play this? What do I do? and it's really shown through. He's won his first tournament with only a couple of months of playing under his belt, doing really well for himself. For Retribution players in general, some specific advice I would say is don't worry about playing in theme from the moment you start playing the faction. Just buy a few units you like the look of. The rule is always play what you think looks cool, because you'll enjoy it more, and we do want everyone to enjoy this game. It also means you'll be more eager to learn with them. While you're just feeling out the faction, because Retribution in general has a lot of options, and they're also very synergistic. They are meant to work together. So if you play a mix of units to start with, you'll learn a lot about how they interact. Later on, start building towards themes, use them as a guide for what you want to buy next and what you want to try, and stick to just a few casters. Because Ret has a lot of casters that are viable in that you can play them and have a good game into most things. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. But trying to play all of them will just mean you learn none of them. Make sure you have a lot of experience with something before you move on to the next caster. I would recommend for a new Ret player, Helena, just stick with her for a while. She has so many tricks. You can take her in a lot of different directions. I obviously love forges, and it cuts down on your painting as well, which is nice as a new player. And you get to play with the big stompy robots that we all like. Yeah. But obviously, whatever you find interesting. If you find halberdiers interesting with her, play some halberdiers. If you find shadows interesting with her, play shadows, but don't play Dawn Guard. Just don't. Don't do that anymore, please.
Come on, that's a bunch of weapon masters. What could go wrong?
Yes, what could go wrong? This is the problem with
last word.
I started playing the theme on a bet with Adam Oligschlager off the Ret page to prove that the theme was bad, and so far I have won all my games with it, which is a big problem when you're trying to prove that something is bad. I clearly need to be less good. So the next one we have on the list is the state of the meta. This is going to be interesting.
Is there any other hidden boogeyman except for the Cricks? What do you think?
Grimkin, I am finding to be quite a big boogeyman. I definitely have to consider them when I'm making a list pairing. I think every faction has to now. Coming from England, where there is basically one Cygnar player for every 3 people who live here, or something silly like that, I do have to consider Cygnar when I build lists. But the Cygnar pairing, I've found, is in flux at the moment. People aren't sure exactly what to play. I've seen a lot of people returning to Nemo free, which scares me a lot. I've seen a lot of people returning to Haley free now that Gravediggers is coming soon, which terrifies me. But definitely those 3 Cricks, as you mentioned, Grimkin and Cygnar, ones to consider. I would put those as the top 3 with Scorn just underneath. I would put it higher, but I'm told Scorn has a big problem with Cricks. Maybe Masters of War fixes that, but I've seen a lot of negativity on that front, and it's from Scorn players whose assessment I trust. So I'm happy to say they're about 4, just underneath that, Cricks, Cygnar and Grimkin at the moment. Besides that, it's kind of up in the air at the moment. I'm not quite sure where everybody is. I know Ret is definitely pretty high, maybe not really high, but probably after Scorn, and then the rest are sort of in a mix. I am kind of unique, I find, in not rating Khador very highly. I don't respect them much. There is only one Khador pairing that has ever given me a major problem, which is Zakova 1 and Zakova 2. Zakova 1 being the biggest problem. I find her to be very underrated. Kado players don't tend to play her. And I know they have considerations other than Ret and thinking about what beats Ret. But she's definitely a very good caster, did very well on the England teams this year. I expect to see more of her at some point. Until I do, Kado doesn't scare me so much, and we'll talk about that when it comes to Scottish Masters games.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Good. So we can go on to the Masters specific. So tell us how was the venue?
So the venue was Common Ground Games in Stirling, which is basically a really, really nice venue. It's got space for about 60 players at a push, I would say, something like that. I haven't counted tables exactly, so I may be wrong, but it's very spacious, very clean. It's got great storage for things under tables. The terrain is excellent as well, definitely very high quality. The kind of thing I would expect for a large international event. Food on site, there's a burger bar, which is so nice. The highlight of going to Scotland for me is getting a burger there. It's just the best thing. I'm supposed to eat healthy at tournaments, but in Scotland, I make an exception.
That's nice.
Definitely a very nice place to play. One of my favourite venues in the world, actually.
Okay, that's cool. What was the faction representation in the tournament? And anybody was more present than the rest?
So I have it in front of me here. The joint highest representation was Retribution, Grimkin, and Protectorate. Now, I knew going into the tournament that Protectorate were very popular, and I knew that Grimkin was sort of taking off over there, but the thing about the Scottish meta is it's very spread out across the country. The meeting place tends to be Common Ground, but everybody plays separately otherwise, quite far across the country. So it's hard to tell by asking any one person what gets played in Scotland. I wasn't expecting there to be two other Ret players, actually. Another thing to note is there were very few Signar and Crix players at the event. They were quite rare. So Dodge Crix was actually a plan going into the event. Not because I don't think I can play the game, but because it's so much easier if I don't have to play Crix. My life just gets so much better.
My life would also get better if I didn't have to play Crix.
Come on. Somebody has to do it. They did it on my tournament. It was very nice because they made, I think, one or two. First round, there were two Crix mirror matches. So go figure. There is a way to.
They deserve each other. Poor Crix players. We hate on them so much. They're just doing a valuable service by keeping the Kado players down. Keep at it, Crix players. We love you, really.
Okay.
All right. So what did you play? What list did you bring, and what casters? And so briefly, what were your tactics planned for those casters?
So my two lists were the Assyria list that I took to the WTC and that I've been running for quite a while now, which is in Shadows, as I've been mentioning, double Strike Force, double Chimera, a Hyperion, double Arcanist, double Mage Hunter Assassin, Iris 1 and Narn. I found it to be a very good generalist list. It plays well into most things. I found it has a playable game into Signar and Crix. And any list in Retribution that has a good game into, well, not a good game, but a playable game into both of those must be a very strong list in this meta indeed. I've found also that, as I say, it works quite well on scenario. It has a lot of options, takes a lot of board space. So the other list was Alara 2, and I went into the event not really liking Alara 2 very much. It's sort of a joke in the Ret group chat we have for England. about just how much I don't like playing Alara 2. Yet I seem to be doing quite well with her at the minute. She's only lost a couple of games in practice, and she went undefeated over the event in 3 games out of 5. The list for her is in Defenders. It's triple Halberdiers, all with Soulless, double Thane, Nis Hunters, Skereth, an Occanist, a Chimera, and a Phoenix. And I grew to like it quite a lot over the course of the event, but also in practice as a good answer to Grimkin. Previously, I had been playing Thyron as an answer to Grimkin because of having Spell Piercer, an accuracy boosting feat, and just bringing the tools that you need to deal with Gremlin Swarms, because Gremlin Swarms are very annoying.
Yeah.
And also, 2 AFGs, 2 Arcantric Force Generators is pretty good these days. But with Alara, I took a different path of just seeing what happens if I play a ton of infantry, which I haven't done since I played Crix towards the later end of Mark II, and just thought I'd see what happens. I didn't really have much of a plan for what to drop it into. I knew it was a good Grimkin drop from playing against Mr. Sykes from the England squad. I knew that it would be okay into Trolls because Adam Williams has been telling me about that matchup quite a lot, as I've had trouble with it in the past. I know Trolls are the worst faction, apparently. Everybody says this. But Doomshaper 3, I would rate as a bit of a problem for Rhett, depending on what your pairing is. He can cause an issue. So, yeah, I was planning to drop this list into both of those. Didn't really have a plan beyond that. The plan was just take a lot of board space, charge, see what happens afterwards.
That sounds like a good plan.
It's the best plan, just not complicated. I don't have to know what Alara 2 does. I just press the feet button and things go very fast.
Yeah.
So let's go to the games then, because that's why we met actually.
Exactly.
So the first game I played, let me just check my records, was against Stuart playing Circle. His pairing was, I believe, Balder 2 and Kaya 3. Now, the scenario we were playing was, let me just go back a bit. I know I got first turn. I know Breakdown, that was it. We were playing Breakdown, so a rather dead scenario. And there was some quite impactful terrain on the table. There were 2 large-ish obstructions, one in the centre of the board and one towards the right of the table. Stuart was playing a Balder 2 in Bones list, which is what he dropped into me and what I was expecting, with a single Waldrath, a Fulcrum, 3 Wold Words, and Megalith, and just some support dotted around with 2 Sentry Stones. I knew that Assyria into that matchup is okay. With a single Waldrath, I can play it, but on that particular scenario, I thought maybe Alara 2 had more of a chance, and I'd just come out of a 5-6 hour drive, I think, because of road closures, so I just wanted to push some models forward, so Alara 2 it was.
Okay.
So I managed to lose the roll-off, but Stuart actually gave me the first turn because he wanted to avoid those obstructions that I talked about earlier. Now, looking back at that game, I think he underestimated just how fast I could get things to move in choosing to go second, but that's just a matter of, seeing the matchup on the table, I think. So we both move up quite aggressively. I know that he can't do too much damage to me on the bottom of 1, which, as I said earlier, is where the attrition's sort of starting. But I'm not too worried. At most, I lose maybe 6 Halberdiers, and in return, Skereth gets his +2, which is going to be important in dealing with things with Roots of the Earth on them. Just putting some early damage on making him have to either repair and then he's not spraying me, or if he doesn't repair, it gets easier to kill it a turn later. So top of 2 is when the action really starts. I charge his fulcrum. I mess up because I'm tired. It's a bit of an uncharacteristic mistake that I make because I'm not used to playing so much infantry. I leave a couple of halberdiers in front of Scyrah, who has Scything Touch from Alara, so my angle to get Scything Touch on his fulcrum before my halberdiers charge is kind of weird. So instead of killing it, which is about an 80% chance, I leave it on 10 or so boxes, but he can repair it afterwards. But there's a whole bunch of halberdiers in his face. I also charge one of his sentry stones on the other side of the board and basically try to kill it at dice of 6. And with 3 halberdiers charging, I do no damage to it, which makes me very sad. The rest of the unit is therefore kind of in quite an aggressive position because I've given them a run order, but it sort of tempts him to come forward and lets me deliver a really big punch on the top of turn 3. A turn later than I was hoping for, but I knew that bottom of 1, he's not going to just run into my threat range, as I'm not that lucky, and he's just going to try and take as little threat on his models as possible while taking a few of mine. So I'm willing to give up 1 unit of halberdiers. He obliges, takes most of them off, almost gets caught out by the Soulless, they were absolute heroes all games, the Soulless, all 3 games. They did so much work. I learned that their swords are magical, which will come up later. Basically, he does not that much, kills about 8 halberdiers. Next turn, my charge hits home. I kill the Waldrath from full to dead. I finish off his fulcrum. I kill a sentry stone on the other side of the board to the fulcrum. I just jam him so hard, and I end up scoring a couple of CPs, I think. He can't really retaliate from this point. The game is basically over, and Alara, because of her feat being model unit, is so far back that he can't touch her with anything at all, because I really don't want to lose game 1. So I end up winning that game. He concedes rather than letting me grind it out on scenario, which I'm okay with. It means we're both less tired. We get to get some food earlier.
Yeah, that's always a good start. And it seemed that few more low model count list against Alara halberdiers with 2 units of them. It's not really a best choice, I think, because too few attacks to clear the zones.
Yes. Now, I do think he chose the right list on account of his other option being Kaya free. Lots of beasts focusing on death, but I have CMA. I'm probably in a good position against Kaya 3. So I think he made the right choice to drop Balder 2. It was just a difficult matchup for him. So after that lunch break, my next game was against Alan Gibb playing Kado. His pairing I remember quite well because, spoiler alert, I end up playing against it twice. So I play... What was it? So he's playing Vlad 1 in Wolves of Winter, the Doom Reaver theme, and Karchev in Winter Guard theme, just so that he has some scenario pressure with the advanced moves. The Vlad 1 list was what I ended up playing against, and we actually played on Spread the Net, which, as we should all know, is a very, very live scenario.
Yeah.
So Assyria is my drop into most Kado pairings. I find she's really strong into them. They don't really have an answer for Mage Hunter Strike Force flanking hard and spreading out in their normal 2-list pairings, and the Hyperion can be difficult for them to deal with as well, which I know sounds weird in a faction with Marauders, but I will sometimes just play my Hyperion really far back until a cortex is crippled or the arms are taken out, and suddenly those marauders are a lot less scary because I will just keep repairing and healing the field boxes on my Hyperion. So I know that this matchup is very good for Assyria, so I'm definitely going to choose her. And Alan sort of ums and ahs, he's not quite sure, and he decides to drop Vlad into me. I get first turn because of my +1, and I take it. And I take a very aggressive position with Mage Hunter Strike Force on the flanks. I do know from experience against this theme that the Doom Reavers can go very far, but I'm not so worried if they run to engage because I will just kill them with CMAs, and I have takedowns, so the tough doesn't matter so much. But if he charges me, then I'm losing models bottom of 1, the attrition is not going in my favour. So I stay out of their threat ranges and position wide on the left and right. He in return doesn't really have anything he can do, bar just run at me and try not to die. The battle group, I believe, was 2 Growlars, a Juggernaut, and a Marauder. Sorry, Alan, if I'm getting this wrong. There was also Greylord Turnian, who I was quite worried about because Signs and Portents sprays are not useful for Mage Hunter Strike Force. I find in the Kador matchup, if you lose Strike Force early to just random things like Rocketeer Blasts or Mortar Shots, then it'll slowly swing against you. You have to be very careful of that. So I was very worried about them all game. So in my turn 2, I don't feat because his jacks aren't near enough to me. And I just kill all of his Doom Reavers. I have so many shots that it's fairly likely they all die. And again, I just maintain this aggressive position. I make sure there's a solo on my flag, even though that it's top of turn 2, so that unless he contests me, I will score. And it's quite hard for him to contest without giving me something big, because all of his Doom Reavers are dead now. So in his next turn, he has no other option than to just run at me again. He has to try and kill some Strike Force. It doesn't work well for him. And I'm not talking much about this game because it was over quite quickly. Basically, I scored my flag in his turn, or was it one or the other? Scored either my flag or my Jack zone, and in the next turn, I actually ended up killing 3 heavies with my feet and scoring both Warjack zones and both flags to take me to 5 ahead. Unfortunately, he couldn't score his own zone due to a couple of Mage Hunter Strike Force that were contesting up there, I believe. So I ended up taking that one on scenario very quickly. Spread the Net is known for being quite a fast-paced scenario. Yeah, that was a very quick game, I found.
Yeah, it seems so because if your army list is prepared for scoring flags and multiple zones, then Spread the Nets can be over like in 1 or 2 turns without much of the issue. Rounds, I would say.
I've found that Kador, outside of Legion of Steel, has a bit of an issue with putting solos on flags, and that's one of the reasons I rate the matchup so highly for me, that they have this difficulty with flags. I mean, in a Winter Guard list, they have Joe. In Wolves of whatever, what is it? The Jack.
Wolves of Winter.
Wolves of Winter, there's not that many solos. You have Fenris, you have your Colden Lord. They want to come forward. Everything else want to stay back. Same with the Jack theme. The only one that does it is Legion of Steel with Sokovia, because you can put an Iron Fang Kovnik on a flag behind some clouds. Very difficult to deal with. But that's a talk for another day. So my third matchup is actually someone you might know, Konrad Krolicki.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Conrad was the one player at the entire event who I was absolutely terrified of playing against.
But he didn't play Scorn, I checked.
No, he was not playing Scorn. He was playing Grimkin. And Alara 2 was normally okay into Grimkin, but he had King of Nothing. And I know nothing about what King of Nothing does, or I didn't going into this tournament. I hadn't played the matchup, and that made me very worried, because I know Conrad is a very good player, and if I make a mistake, I will lose very hard. So, predictably, he drops King of Nothing into me. We are playing the Pit 2, which is a very difficult scenario to get Grimkin on, because it's so easy for Gremlin Swarms to contest, and so easy for him to brick up. Not that King of Nothing tends to do that. His list was more, I believe, triple Gorehound, double Frightmare, bunch of Krabbits, Skinnemons, no, 2 Cage Ragers, and some other stuff, Krabbits and Cariana, triple minimum Dreadrots as well. I know there's a lot of debate on the Grimkin page about Dreadrots, and to be honest, they didn't do a huge amount in this game, other than just contest scenario and try and get in the way. So we played very cagily around each other. We both knew about each other's threat ranges. Conrad had his Cloud Wall to rely on. I had my access to Ghostly to get around terrain, and the fact that I could get around the high def on his Gorehounds quite easily with the Halberdier's mini feat. So we play a very cagey scenario game. Basically, I end up scoring first. I believe I score 2 control points on the top of turn 3. And I end up just convectioning Gremlin Swarms over the course of the game, getting as many magical attacks on them as I can. Convection, apparently, a really good spell.
Yeah, on Chain Attack, they always said it's the shittest nuke. But, paying 2 and getting 1 focus back is not that really bad. I mean,
when I was first starting out in War Machine, when I was just a little baby, I almost beat the best player in the country at the time, Mr. Perkins, by doing 2 fully boosted convections on his caster and almost killing him. And it remains to this day one of my proudest moments. But I digress. So getting back into the game, I ended up getting that scenario lead early, and that was pretty key. Having the Solus really helped as well, because it meant his Ashes to Ashes casts were quite limited, and I stayed in Shield Wall the majority of the game as well, because in his list he has a little bit of trouble dealing with so many infantry, especially if I can deal with the Gorehounds, because they are the only models with reach. They can deal with little clumps of infantry quite well. It also is a problem for him that most of his list is Mat 6, and he doesn't have a way to make that better, except for Arcana. Speaking of Arcana, actually, I should have made it clear which he chose. Of course, he chose his Trump, Taste of Ashes. He also chose Sacrifice, which he, I believe, didn't get a chance to trigger all game. I focused down killing beasts, making sure I killed one before moving on to the next one. And he also chose Ruin, which I find one of the scarier arcanas. I did manage to burn through it on the top of turn 2 to kill a Gremlin Swarm. Conrad had to use Arcane Vortex and Ruin to stop me killing it with Convections, I believe. I still ended up getting it, because I only needed a 6 to hit and a 5 to kill. It's pretty okay odds, not the best, because I couldn't boost, had to upkeep Scything Touch. But it meant that it was out of the way. It meant he couldn't cancel, say, a late game concentrated power from the Arcanist, which is one of those things where in the late game, if you forget about Ruin and you're low on clock, you're not thinking, and suddenly your Phoenix is only power 17 instead of power 19, it can really change a game. So I was happy to get it out the way early. So I pulled ahead on scenario. He sort of made an effort at getting the left-hand zone, but I just want to make it clear now, he had some awful dice in doing that. We talked earlier about how it takes some luck to win a Masters. There wasn't any one thing where it completely changed the game. It was just a few models not dying here and there, just a few models that could have been gone, and in the late game might have really been important. So that went against him quite hard. But the plan to push him off my right flank, where my objective was it worked out pretty well. I wanted to have access to magic weapons all game, so I kept a shield guard near it in case he started wanting to shoot or spell it. I also ended up using the mini feat on one of my halberdier units, not to kill any of his important models like his war beasts, but actually to kill a gremlin swarm that ended up in my zone, just getting the soulless in there with the halberdier to help him out, swinging at mat 7. So, decent way to clear a gremlin swarm out for those who might not be aware of that. Use that because it's really good. The game ends up coming down very low on clock. It becomes a very tense game where we're having to really think about what we're doing. And I do something a bit sneaky. It ends up not mattering, but I leave a House Guard Thane just aiming sat behind a forest. It's a 2D forest, a 3D forest, so he can see the model, but by just not doing much with it, the hope was that he would forget about it, and I would be able to contest in my next turn on his side of the board. Meanwhile, I'm racking up control points in my side of the board and playing for turn 7. As long as I can keep staying ahead and maybe start putting some pressure on King, I'm okay. But what Conrad decides to do, from being very low on clock, like maybe 2 minutes left, he goes for an assassination on Alara with King, a spell assassination. It's not massively good because I am at full camp, but he gets me in his -2 armor aura, so I am still a bit worried because dice can happen. But fortunately, I survive it, and in the next turn, Alara chops his head off. Which
perfect. Well, one question: how did you go around his Trump Arcana? Because that can mess up infantry pretty well.
It can. So honestly, I wasn't massively bothered about it because of having so many infantry, but I tended to try to just kill 1 or 2 beasts a turn, and as soon as he popped it, I stopped committing models. I wanted to make sure I had plenty alive in the late game.
So you waited it out.
I basically waited it out. On the turn he popped it, I think he killed 4 models or something like that. I only killed 2 heavies, I want to say. No, I only killed 1 beast on the turn that he popped it. So he didn't get a huge amount out of it, but I definitely had to play around it for a lot of the game because of having so many infantry models. Took that game in the end on assassination. I was fairly confident on it in scenario, but given that I had half my army to charge King with, I decided to take the assassination because, as I say, if it's about 92% or so, I'll take it just to end the game when I'm fairly confident in it. Because if I give him another chance to try and assassinate, it might all go wrong.
King is not known for his powerless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's not too powerful, right? 14-14, is he?
Yes, he's not very, and he doesn't have much defensive abilities. So it's kind of a problem for him. Anyway, so the next game, we had a drop from the winners bracket, so we ended up with a pair up, which is why I ended up playing against Alan again. But in this first game of the winners bracket on day 2, I played against one of my teammates for Eisenhammer, Cole Westbrook. He was playing Trolls for the event, a pairing of Doomy 3 and Madrak 2, and we were playing on Outlast. So we had went out to the pub the night before, talked about the matchup a bit, because we're good friends. We weren't massively bothered about who wins it or not. We wanted to make sure our pairings were okay for Eisenhammer, which is coming in a couple of months. So we talked about it, and we thought I probably drop Alara 2, but I may drop Assyria, and he probably drops Doomy 3, but he may drop Madrak 2. So going into this game, I really wasn't sure what I was playing against. We were playing on Outlast, so a very infantry-favouring scenario, which didn't matter too much in this game, because it's easy to contest things while being quite close together, bricking up. So we ended up with Alara 2 versus Doomy 3, and I get the first turn, which is so important in this game, because I sprint up the board. Now, Cole has not been playing Trolls very long. He has actually only played them for the event while he's waiting on some Signar to arrive. So he's not sure how to play the matchup. I run full pelt at him turn 1, so he has two options. He can either go for a little bit of bottom of 1 attrition, use his Mountain King to spray off some halberdiers, but I've positioned so that he can't spray too many, although it is still a tempting amount. He can get maybe 4 with the spray, but not any of my UAs, so I can still mini-feat next turn. And if he does that, he pretty much has to feat or he loses his Mountain King. Or he can stay back quite far, and I can either then push him off scenario or just retreat. Now, if I were Cole, I would have went from the second option, and we talked about this after the game, but he went for the first option, just ran everything at me very aggressively, protected by his feet, because he knew I wouldn't go in under his feet, because it's effectively +5 armor. It's very hard to get around. And I don't have any grievous wounds in my list for Mulg or the Mauler. So I just retreat. As I say, just go back towards the edge of zones, make sure he can't get too many models in retaliation, and I position so that in my next turn, I can get the flag with the solo without having that solo be on the flag, where he could easily contest for a start and spray it off with the Mountain King. And I don't want to lose my solos early, because if I do, I have to put Alara on the flag, and she may be assassinated. So in response, Cole tries to play cautiously, goes back to his brick formation in the middle, makes sure both the zones are contested, and his flag is scored. So he scores a point on his flag, putting him ahead. But I'm not too scared by this. I know that I can pull ahead in the late game. His Mountain King goes in to try and kill Skereth, so that I can't swap Scything Touch in my next turn. He also manages to kill a few more halberdiers, taking 1 unit down to 4 guys left with no unit attachment. So they are basically not charging things. They are not very hard hitting. But they get a different job next turn. He has left a lane behind Mulg for Mulg to admonition backwards if I charge. I feat, so my halberdiers are all ghostly, and run them round the back of the Mountain King to block Mulg in. So the result of that play is I end up killing the Mountain King with my Nis and my Phoenix and a few other models. I kill Mulg, and I kill his Axa, which is very important, with halberdier charges all across the board. I end up scoring 2 CPs this turn. I don't score the zone Mountain King.
Killing Axa removes his ability to rush, right?
Yes, it does. Yeah. So this is very good for me because the threat range of his beasts goes down, and I can use terrain to outmaneuver him now, which is very important for the late game with Alara. Because after you charge in with all your halberdiers, your mini feet, you don't hit very hard unless you get to charge again. So you have to use the terrain to position for those later turns. So I'm starting to get ahead on scenario, and he gets his mauler in. He has a bouncer, I forgot to mention. I did about half its boxes on my feet turn with extra attacks, and don't kill it. It ends up just killing 2 to 3 halberdiers to turn, and that starts mounting up really quickly. So if I let this game go out to turn 7, then the scenario pressure that I have is going to go away really quickly. So I have to win this game by turn 5, or I'm just going to lose too many models.
Okay.
Basically, I push really hard on my flag to score, but I know I'm not going to score it very much because he has this central brick of his remaining models that's just slowly moving forward. I'm definitely scoring the left zone as he has almost nothing in it, and I'm definitely scoring the right zone now that the Mountain King is gone. So basically, the game plays out. The bouncer and the mauler just remove a couple of models every turn, nothing much. I debate every turn sending Alara in to kill the mauler, but each turn I decide that it's more important to just keep her alive, because if I try and kill the mauler and it goes wrong, I am dead, and I am winning this game. So I have to keep winning.
Don't get greedy.
Exactly.
Don't try and kill things with your caster, unless it's King of Nothing, in which case go for it.
Yeah.
So I end up taking the game on scenario just by pushing really hard and letting these models that are killing a couple of infantry every turn come down the center. I end up taking it 8-3, which is the highest my scenario score got all weekend. So that was a really tight and close game again. Now, I am very worried at this point because the other players are Alan playing Kado, the one I already played, and a Signar player playing Nemo 3 and Striker 2. Now, he played Nemo 3 in all 3 of his games so far and decided to play Striker 1 to not list lock himself. I was okay with this because it meant a higher chance of Kado beating him than if he played Nemo 3. And sure enough, Kado ended up beating Striker 2, and I ended up playing against Kado in the finals. Now, there are some photos of that game on the Retribution page, so I'll let listeners look for that. But the short version of the game is I make the same kind of plays I do in the previous Kado game. I go wide with my strike force, but I decide to put them all on one flank. The reason I decide to do that is because of his gun carriage. I know from the Kado matchup that the gun carriage can be sort of annoying, but I know that Hyperion can normally kill it quite easily. He's put it quite far out on a flank, which means if Hyperion goes and kills it, his jacks aren't getting into me, which ends up being the case. His jacks have to try and deal with my strike force rather than dealing with my Hyperion. So basically, by the time he gets to feet, he has maybe 2 jacks left, something like that. It's not very good for him. He takes an early scenario lead of 2 CPs on his turn 2. Quite threatening to me because it's standoff and he can score 3 in a turn pretty okay, pretty consistently, as he has mortar crews that he can put into the circular zones. And I haven't contested the left-hand circular zone so heavily because I want my Hyperion to be attacking his jacks later in the turn. But eventually the fact that Hyperion is still alive and undamaged in the late game, like it so often is, means he just can't get ahead on scenario anymore, and I end up winning the game. Now, I do want to talk about Assyria's late game. Somebody asked me on Facebook about how they think Assyria is known for not having much of a late game. Obviously, she doesn't have any personal attacking power, But the way I play my Hyperion in general is very defensive. I'll always try and take little bits off opposing heavies, rather than charging in and then getting my Hyperion killed in return. And that means it's normally alive and on full boxes towards the end of the game. I'll keep repairing it as well through the game. If Scyrah is okay to allocate focus to it, I won't use my Arcanists to do it. They'll just put boxes back on it and keep it alive. And as soon as you get to that point on turn 5 where there's not much left, nothing kills that Hyperion.
Yeah, that's what I noticed also when I was playing Mercs with Galleon. If you keep your colossal life till the end of the game, then it's really game changer.
Yes, it was something I learned very early on with the Scyrah and with Ret in general. Into the Khador matchup, especially, if Hyperion stays alive, you are probably winning that game.
Also, Scyrah has this auxiliary attack, so she is pretty good with the...
She makes Hyperion sing. By having access to Blinding Light, you get around Rat 5, and you make sure nothing is really shooting it. And as you say, ancillary attack is so important.
Yeah. They are like a team. Scyrah and Hyperion.
Yep. I've built a Scyrah list without Hyperion, but I like Hyperion more, I think.
Yeah, and your Colossals are cheap, so that's also important.
Exactly. Hyperion is very cheap and very hard-hitting for his cost.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Okay.
And also she has armor buff for him, right?
Yeah.
So,
yes, inviolable.
Yeah, so it's really useful. It's a great piece, centerpiece of the army, and can do a lot of work with her. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so again, congratulations, Mark, on winning.
Exactly. Congratulations.
Thank you very much that you took our invitation and we had the chance to talk with you. And
always a pleasure.
And it was great to have you here. We hope that we will meet each other in person soon and have you more often on the podcast when you win another one.
Well, let's see how hungry.
So next week.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I won't see you guys at PlogCon, as I'm in a UK event at the same date. Unfortunately, I didn't know it was the same date when I booked it. But I'll try and catch you at another event, the next one we're at.
Exactly. We plan to go in January to Norway.
So Conquest. I will definitely see you guys at Conquest. A lot of people in the UK are actually going. We've managed to get quite a crowd, which is rare for international events. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, nice. The more the merrier.
Exactly.
Okay, great. So thanks for the cast, and we'll see you out there.
Okay, bye-bye.
Guys, thank you very much, and have a good night.
Yes, good night.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Boxcars. I hope you liked it. See you soon.